I would like to start maybe with a quick round of introductions. We have 3 presenters from 3 different countries. I see Manuela in the picture, an old study buddy of mine. So would you maybe like to start?
Yes, of course. Nice to see you, Ludwig. We're actually 4 presenters today. So I will be presenting the Spanish market. So I work at Business Sweden Madrid. And I have a background as a civil engineering with Ludwig, was working in the solar energy market. So it's very interesting to be here today. And with me, I have, 3 stunning colleagues, but maybe I will start with the France colleagues, so Salim and Cecilia.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Cecilia Hedlund, and I work as a consultant in the Paris office. I've been with Business Sweden for about 5 years, working a lot with the energy sector specifically, both district heating, cooling, offshore wind power, as well as solar energy. So very happy to be here today with all of you. And I will hand over to my colleague Salim to give his introduction.
Thank you, Cecilia. Hi, everyone. My name is Salim. I'm a consultant here at the Business Sweden office in Paris. Started in our North and West Africa hub in Casablanca in 2018. I worked a lot with solar energy development in Morocco, with a lot of governmental plans there, where we helped Swedish companies get attracted by the market. And I continued working on the energy sector here in the Paris office. So nice to meet you all.
I can continue from Italy. My name is Elisa Laiso, and I'm a project manager at our office in Milan. We actually cover also the Greek market from the Italy office, as well as Malta and Cyprus. But today we will present the opportunities in Italy and Greece within energy market and solar power. So yes, with me I have also my colleague Rebecca presenting the Greek opportunities later on. But over to you, Rebecca.
Yeah, hi everyone, good morning. I hope you're very well. I work with Elisa at Milan office. I'm a consultant here, quite recently incorporated. But I previously worked a bit on the Spanish market with Swedish solar energy companies, and I will be presenting the Greek market today. Great to see you all.
Okay, so I think our first presenter will be France. I will hand over.
All right, so I'm gonna do a brief introduction to the solar energy market in the Southern European region. And first of all, just so you can see us all on a slide as well, in case you would like to contact us after this meeting, you're very welcome. Of course, if there's a specific market, feel free to reach out to that person. And we often do cross-market projects. So if there are several markets that interest you, you can also reach out to just one of us and we will coordinate that. But so this is the team. So to give you a bit of an introduction to Business Sweden as an organization, many times a Swedish company will have heard of us, but perhaps not always have worked with us before. So Business Sweden is a partly governmental, partly private organization. We are owned by Svenskt Näringsliv and the Swedish government. Our purpose is to support Swedish companies to grow their sales internationally, as well as international companies to invest in Sweden. As you can see on this map here, we are present across 40 markets with about 400 people. Half of those are Swedish, half of those are locally employed. And throughout these markets, we're able to cover most countries in the world and support Swedish companies with their needs. We work with all sizes of companies within most industries. Some of the most important industries where we have a lot of projects is of course based on the competencies of Swedish companies. And that's, for example, smart industry, smart transport, smart energy, as well as healthcare and life sciences. So as for our consulting services, we provide services across 4 different areas. As you can see here, they are market expansion, where we, just to explain briefly, help Swedish companies to expand to new markets and also to grow in their current markets within new segments and channels. We also work with sales acceleration, which is often about finding a new partner, finding new customers, etc. Then we also work business to government, where we can support Swedish companies with government relations to help in foreign markets. And finally, business incubation operations. This area is a little bit different. It's more hands-on support that we provide that's related to, for example, to have a co-working space in our offices. We can help to set up payroll for your international employees. We can help with employment and also to establish a company in a new market. Finally, I would also want to underline that many of these services can be government enabled. And for example, that means that small and medium-sized enterprises can receive subsidies for doing projects with Business Sweden, and also support without charge in some instances. For example, if it's related to trade facilitation or small questions on each market. So we are all painfully aware of the COVID pandemic and the economic effects that it had globally. The EU recovery plans, which I will get into very soon, present many opportunities for Swedish companies. And that's why Business Sweden has made it its mission to continuously share information and analyze business opportunities within this area. So in the past 2 years, we have done quite many reports and webinars to support Swedish companies in staying on top of what's going on globally, both in terms of COVID impact and in terms of the recovery plans. We have monitored also the recovery funding, especially in Europe, that's been available, and we have a database of that funding and the investments. Apart from that, we of course supported companies individually during this time. There was a lot of issues related to supply chain, especially getting access to certain goods and services that were difficult during this time. Then finally, some of the plans that we have been working on during 2022. First of all, that we are continuously updating the EU recovery funding database. Secondly, we support many Swedish companies with stakeholder management in their local markets in order to help them to position themselves and in the future win local tenders where Swedish technologies are relevant. We also provide industry-specific deep dives within the industries that you saw on the previous slide. These are created and released regularly. And finally, we also provide targeted promotional activities across the EU, where several different Swedish companies can partake jointly under a specific theme and position themselves. That could be trade fairs, or that could be delegations, etc. So let me get back to the EU recovery plan that I mentioned. So following the COVID-19 pandemic, EU member states decided to allocate 792 billion euros for EU's economic recovery. And the countries that were hardest hit by the pandemic are also eligible for the greatest budgets. And in fact, Italy, Spain, and France are some of the top recipients for this reason. Many types of the projects that are eligible for funding were under the themes of green transition and digital development, as you can see here on the slide. And that's why it's not surprising to see that the key investment areas in Southern Europe are these 5 areas, which are sustainable, safe, and connected mobility, housing rehabilitation, renewable energies and hydrogen, smart grids and energy, and finally enabling an industrial circular economy. Today, of course, we will focus on 2 of the ones in the middle, renewable energies, as well as smart grids and energy storage. Great. I think with that, I will hand over to my colleague Salim, who will do the country-specific presentation, and we're starting with France.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. Other industrialized countries faces an energy crisis, given a lot of geopolitics around this. But France has therefore made renewable energy a focus development layer for its energy mix. Currently, renewable sources, solar, geothermal, wind, and biomass produces around 322 terawatt per hour, 2020. Solar power accounts for around 3% of this generation, or roughly 9.4 gigawatt of France's total power generation. And specifically, photovoltaics or PV solar production energy contributes to 1.8% of the national electricity production in France. Also important to mention here is that nearly 90% of the installations of solar or PV solar production units are directed to self-consumption, so private installations. Public subsidies linked to renewable energy in general reached 5.7 billion euros in 2019, and photovoltaics concentrates roughly half of it, nearly 2.8 billion euros. If we look at the regional concentration, 4 regions in France concentrates nearly 80% of the national production of solar energy, and you can see all the regions on the map here in this slide. And finally, the largest photovoltaic power plant in France produces approximately the annual consumption for a city of 55,000 inhabitants, and it's located in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, called Toulouse Solar Park. Finally, in general, about the focus areas and objectives of France, just briefly, since we will go back to these later. By 2028, there's a program called the Multi-Annual Energy Program that aims to develop the production of electricity via solar energy, mainly has the objectives of producing between 35.1 and 44 gigawatt per hour photovoltaics and 1.85 to 2.5 terawatt hour for thermal total energy. And finally, France is also, we notice that France focuses a lot on promoting agrivoltaic technology and the exploitation of large empty spaces, commercial roofs, public or military areas with PV solar plants. Here, like I mentioned, the objective of France is to increase the supply of green energy in order to continuously decrease dependence on nuclear power and maybe achieve a carbon neutrality by 2050. Just a small comment here, renewables, when the France has an objective to reach 40% of energy supplied by renewables, and the focus when we talk about renewables for France, for the French government, is the solar energy. And according to the Environment and Energy Management Agency, the untapped potential of just roof-based photovoltaic solar energy is estimated at 364 gigawatts. So this is why we think that solar will be a very important pillar for improving or greening the energy mix of France. And this comes also with substantial investment from the government that we will look into. Like I mentioned, I said, France puts solar energy as an important pillar, and measures or the project announced for the different programs focus a lot on the solar energy. Specifically here, we talk about the recovery plan that has a budget of 6.5 billion euros and aims at promoting or financing renewable energy or energy efficiency renovation projects while integrating the self-consumption plant within buildings as much as possible. The main technological focus in this program is the production of heat or electricity through solar, so thermal or photovoltaic installations. Like I said, focus of the measures within the recovery plan, of course, is to install or build new solar park plants, but some others are related, for example, to the installation of power plants on the roofs of industrial wastelands or industrial plants, or also the wastelands around these industrial plants, hangars, warehouses, etc. And France also plans, for example, to build by 2025 1,000 photovoltaic plants with again, to serve the objectives of improving the solar energy contribution to the energy mix. We can also say that this recovery plan, Transformance, focuses also on modernizing the public buildings, particularly reducing their ecological footprint. And just a small comment here, these buildings alone, they represent 25% of France's greenhouse gas emissions. So this is why the government is dedicating 6 billion euros via subsidies to renovate these buildings, the public buildings, and enhance their energy autonomy. Here, in parallel to the recovery plan and what we mentioned before about the multi-annual energy program, this program has also been launched, aiming mainly to structure the administrative procedures and also facilitating those while changing the obligations to install solar panels for some infrastructure. So the example of this legal support from the government via this program is, for example, strengthening the obligations to install photovoltaic panels or green roofs on warehouses, like I mentioned, or car parks or large buildings. Also, France has reduced the costs to connect self-consumption solar installations to the overall grid and increased also the tariff window purchase for self-production surplus. These measures are mainly to push private companies or private households to invest in such installations, which means that there is a commercial need for technologies or solution in that direction here in France. A more general view of the new projects. The program has a budget of 3 billion euros, mainly aiming at financing the installations in the construction and building and outdoor car parkings. As a matter of fact, like I said, the French Energy Efficiency Agency has identified surfaces that are likely to accommodate nearly 8 gigawatts of photovoltaic panels in France, and this is why it's dedicating also a program by this energy to launch projects for installing photovoltaic panels. So what we can also finally mention here is that despite, I would say, proliferation of different types of innovations, we can notice that crystal cell technologies within photovoltaic remain the most attractive solutions for such projects that are launched in this program, and also as per the Transformance, the recovery plan that we mentioned before. I don't know if you take any questions, or we maybe...
Yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to write them in the chat, and then maybe we can take all of them at the end.
Yeah.
I think could be a good idea. Thanks. Over to Manuela in Spain.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So the Spanish market has also been increasing continuously over this past year regarding the renewable energy sector, and with a special focus on the wind and solar energy sector. So we are trying to present today then what are the strategies in the Spanish market and which are the opportunities regarding the recovery plan that you as Swedish companies also can invest and expand your market in Spain or other Southern European markets as France and Italy and Greece. So currently in Spain, the solar power accounts for 50% of the total power generation. And this is going to increase to 23% for 2030. So it's quite a high amount that is happening just now in Spain. And it is expected to boom over this 2022. So it boomed actually 2021. So we had a 30% increase in solar power production compared to last year. And of course, this is going to continuously then during this year. If we ask ourselves then where in Spain are these solar power plants installed, it is mainly in the central and southern part of Spain. So these are the regions of Extremadura, that is the one with the darkest blue, and Andalusia, that is the one in the south. But also if we actually notice what was the highest increase year 2021, that was in the Balearic Islands. So Menorca, Mallorca, and Ibiza were the islands and the regions in Spain where most new upcoming installed photovoltaic power plants were installed during 2021. So what is the government then doing, and what is the strategy? So Spain aims to have 74% of their power generation coming from renewable sources by 2030 and 100% of those for 2050. So in order to reach this target, the Spanish government aims to install 30 gigawatts of solar PV by between 2020 and 2030. So it's quite a high amount. And from this one, 9 gigawatt is going to come from self-consumption PV. So if we compare, for example, with the French market, the Spanish market is mainly focused on big power plants, but it's trying to transition into the self-consumption PV, while France may be focusing more on the self-consumption. And if we look at the aid that is coming from the different ministries, an example of that is, for example, the Spanish Ministry of Environment. They have launched an aid package of 660 million euros for self-consumption PV and storage for energy efficiency in buildings. And this package is, of course, open to any company working in Spain that is aiming to search for this package. So how does the Spanish installed power capacity look? So in December 2021, 56% of the installed power capacity in Spain came from renewable energy sources. And this is an increase of 7% compared to last year. And of this increase, mainly all of it was due to new installed solar power capacity. So before we had mainly wind energy in our renewable energy sources, but these last year's solar power is increasing exponentially. So we have reached 15,000 megawatt of installed solar capacity in Spain in 2021. And if we see how it's going to increase for 2030, well, now we have approximately 14% of solar energy in Spain in our power capacity, and this is going to increase to 23% to 2030. So we still have an increase of 10% with a lot of then market opportunities for a lot of companies. So as Cecilia was mentioning, Spain has gotten a lot of subsidies from the European market. So we have gotten 69.5 billion euros for our recovery and resilience plan. And approximately 10% of these is going to be focusing for the energy transition. So one of these plans is, for example, the integration of renewable energies, and it's going to have a budget of 3.2 billion euros approximately. And this is going to focus on, firstly, increase the share of renewable energy sources. So in order to have this 74% reaching target for 2030 and 100% renewable energy sources by 2050. Then, of course, we're also trying to implement the national self-consumption PV plan with this strategy and with this budget. So Spain aims to have 9 gigawatt of installed PV power capacity of self-consumption by 2030. And currently we only have 2.7. So this is a really big gap from 2.7 to 9, where there is a lot of market opportunities in Spain. Spain is also aiming to develop energy communities, very similar to the one that Ludwig was mentioning with Simris. And this is then doing in collaboration with different legislation changes and pilot projects. We also are trying to invest on the renewable energies in buildings, focusing on energy efficiency. And of course, promoting also the increase of renewable energy in the islands. And this is focusing on the Canary Islands and the Balearic Islands, where not only solar energy is a focus, we also have offshore, geothermal, and water. So if we look at how the budget is structured, Spain has divided the recovery plan into both specific goals and strategic projects. And one of these strategic projects is a project focusing on renewable energy, hydrogen, and storage, where they have different strategies. And one of these strategies is, for example, the measurements for energy transition. So this is going to be measurements in order for Swedish and European and Spanish companies to invest on in Spain. And also strategic projects regarding renewable energy, so solar energy, offshore wind, and energy communities. So in total, a budget of 3 billion euros that's going to be used or delivered between the years of 2022 to 2023. But the projects are going to be delivered until 2026. So there is still a little bit of time. So another very important focus for the Spanish government is actually to look at our electrical infrastructure and trying to do it more robust and flexible. So they are promoting the integration of smart grids, storage, and flexibility storage. So to this end, there is other different kind of objectives that are going to be focusing on during this last year and next year. One of them is therefore to digitalize the digitalization of electrical distribution networks in Spain, the development of energy storage, also in focus on the hydrogen storage, the integration of renewable energies and storage into the grid. And as I was mentioning, they are trying to develop new regulatory framework focusing on sandboxes and regulatory test benches in order to increase different kind of possibilities, such as, for example, energy communities in Spain. And one specific example of opportunity that is now mentioning, it is currently open in the recovery and resilience plan of the Spanish market, is a strategic project for storage, flexibility, and new business models, with a budget of 620 million euros between 2022 and 2023. But as mentioning before, the project is going to be developed until 2026. So at least for the Spanish market, it is very important not only to focus on the current opportunities, but also to look at the overall ideas and objectives that the government has set, because those are the areas where the companies are actually focusing on, and they are trying to find new collaboration opportunities and new collaboration opportunities in the market. So that was all from me. Now we're going to work on the Italian market.
Yes, perfect. So also Italy is continuing its growth within the solar market sector. And actually just last year, 80,000 new photovoltaic plants were installed in the country. And currently there are over 1 million installations already in place in Italy. And when it comes to the capacity, actually during the first quarter of this year, the total installed capacity was double or twice as much as during last year, during Q1 in 2021. So we see that the market is growing pretty fast at the moment. And especially the residential market is very attractive in Italy, as 80% of the current installed plants are in the domestic sector with small scale solar plants. And this has also affected the storage and energy storage market in the domestic use, along with the installation of solar panels on the private houses. And therefore, Italy is now the second largest market after Germany for battery energy storage systems as well. And when we look at the geographic concentration, actually almost half of the installed plants are located in the northern parts of Italy, with Lombardy, where Milan is based as well, is the region with most installed plants, followed by Veneto and Emilia-Romagna that are also in the northern parts of Italy. But actually looking at the capacity, again, the largest capacity of solar energy can be found here in the southern parts. So Puglia, which is the heel of Italy, has 13% of the total national capacity. So also the south is, of course, very favorable when it comes to solar radiation and so on. And looking at plans forward, Italy has quite ambitious plans when it comes to increasing the renewable energy sources on the market. 30% of the total energy should come from renewable sources by 2030, which means that Italy has to double the current amount of rest capacity and install 60 gigawatts of new renewable energy. So the part of the recovery funds is of course dedicated to reach these targets, along with the private housing market, where we see a lot of attractive government incentives that are continuing the growth also in the private market. So currently it's very favorable for private households to also install solar panels on the roofs. And yeah, as you probably know and can see in this slide, currently when it comes to the electricity mix in Italy is very dependent on the gas, the source for energy and electricity. Almost half of the current electricity mix from gas, which means that there's an even stronger urge to switch towards renewables. And the target from the government currently is to have at least 70% by 2030 from renewables, and this counts for solar and wind power. And solar power currently accounts for 9% of the total electricity. So there's very ambitious plans to to grow the installed capacity up until to 300 gigawatts from current 21, which is a pretty huge difference. And this means that there should be an annual increase of almost 4,000 megawatts annually between now and 2030. A lot of installations are expected in the coming years. And this is, of course, also the aim of the recovery plan. And as you saw before, Italy is the largest recipient of the NextGeneration EU funding, from which 60 billion euros will be dedicated to green transition projects, where, of course, solar and wind power is in the center of these plans. And Italy is focusing on, of course, developing new projects with the focus on innovative solutions for both onshore and offshore wind and solar power projects. Also encouraging foreign investors to develop this kind of projects, where more experimental technologies are also used, especially in the offshore market. And then we have the tax bonus of 110% for private households to improve their energy efficiency in houses, which means that all renovations that improves the efficiency, energy efficiency in private houses is almost free of charge, since private households can get tax bonus back from the government. And this includes also the installation of solar panels when it is done in connection with this renovation. Otherwise, solely installation of solar panels would account of 50% of the tax deduction if no other efficiency work is done at the house. So yeah, almost 6 billion euros is dedicated to the development of new solar and wind power projects, and 15 billion is allocated to the private tax bonus. So really ambitious plans in the coming years up until 2026, when all these projects have to be finalized. And as you may know, Italy also wants to become the leading country in Europe when it comes to the manufacturing of the solar panels itself. So not only developing and installing new capacity, but also produce the actual solar panels that are then used for different projects, not only in Italy, but in Europe in general. And this is to become less dependent on the manufacturers from Asia or other countries outside Europe. So Italy wants to be in the leading position among the EU countries. And Enel, for example, the local energy company, is currently building up a new production plant in Sicily, which is to become the largest manufacturing plant in Europe for solar panels. And there are also very favorable government incentives for other producers, manufacturers, to set up production plants in Italy for these purposes. And along with the renewable energy, of course, the smart grid reinforcement is an important factor in the recovery plan, as we saw in the Spanish market as well. In order to feed in all the renewable energy that Italy plans to integrate in the grid network, means that it needs to have a very strong and digitalized grid network in order to handle this transition and integrate up until 4,000 megawatts of new RES capacity. And therefore there are actually currently an open call for local distribution system operators to submit project proposals for smart grid projects, with deadline already here in the beginning of October. And then these digital smart grid projects will be initiated during the beginning of next year and finalized by 2026. So there's a very big need and demand for digital solutions to monitor the grid network and make the electricity grid more resilient, as we saw in Spain as well. And along with these investments, also the energy storage market is booming, and in the private sector at least, there are a lot of incentives for energy storage and battery solutions as well. Okay, we can move on to Greece, and over to you, Rebecca.
All right, great. Moving into the Greek market, which is quite much smaller than these other markets, but Greece has excellent climate conditions to develop the solar energy sector, and there are also very important reforms being made that I will go a little bit more into in short, as well as resources from, on one side, the National Energy and Climate Plan of Greece, which was approved in 2018, and also the NGEU funds, of course. So as of today, Greece has a total installed solar PV capacity that accounts for almost 10% of the total power generation. And the solar capacity has increased with about 12% up to 4,000 megawatts in 2022. Which is quite a strong growth. It's predicted to grow a lot more thanks to recent reforms and also to this economic stimulus. And only this year, renewable installations are expected to grow by 1 gigawatt. And this is also including wind. Wind has been a bit prioritized. It makes up a larger part of the power generation sources, but solar is expected to catch up and to grow a lot. And when it comes to the regional concentration of the solar power capacity, most of it is installed in the north of the country, around 60%. And it's the Central, West, and East Macedonia, which are the regions up in the very north that have almost 40% of the total. And Thessaly, which is also a region in the north, has 18% of the total capacity. So it means that the whole south of the country, including the islands and Athens and the whole Peloponnese island, is not really exploited, and there, of course, is a lot of unused potential. And when it comes to focus areas and objectives, the Greek government aims for a renewable electricity generation proportion of 70%, which has by 2030, and this has increased from a goal of 60% the previous years, and also to have an energy storage capacity of 3 gigawatts by the same year. This is also a goal that has been increased from 1.5 quite recently, so they are really aiming to support this development. And yeah, Greece considers itself to have the perfect conditions to become an European market for lithium-ion-based energy storage in the coming years. It's working towards that. And when it comes to the current electricity mix, the total renewable energy sources capacity is of 10 gigawatt approximately, and to reach the target of having an electricity generation proportion of 70% made up by renewable sources, it has to double this capacity. And when it comes to solar power capacity, it should be accumulated 7.7 gigawatt by 2030 to reach these targets. And as you see, quite similar to the Italian market, Greece is quite dependent on natural gas for the electricity production. It's also planning to produce some local natural gas. And either way, the wind power is the greatest source of renewable energy sources, followed by the solar that accounts for approximately 10%. Then Greece is also quite still dependent on coal and oil. So the target for 2030 is 70%. And recently, Greece has approved new reforms to speed up the licensing procedure for new renewable energy projects. And they're also launching several tenders for both small and large-scale PV plants. This 9 billion euro investments in renewable energy sources comes from the National Energy and Climate Plan. And here on the right side, we will just mention also the upcoming tenders for 2022 and 2023 when it comes to wind and solar. But before that, just commenting also that there are new reforms also under being worked that are aiming to facilitate the development of floating PV pilots, which is quite interesting. And also Greece is aiming to improve energy efficiency of buildings, households, firms, and the public sector, and also to develop photovoltaic systems on rooftops and buildings. And there is an objective to have 600 megawatt of power to be covered by self-consumption by 2030, which is quite an underdeveloped sector in Spain, the self-consumption PV. And there are reforms to standardize and simplify licensing procedures for renewable projects, which is like one of the main reasons why they predict great growth in this area. And there are also new energy storage regulations and policy measures for RES penetration in buildings to reach this objective of nearly zero energy buildings. So the Greek energy regulator called RAE have a few upcoming tenders for 2022 and 2023. For example, there is one closing now in September for 1 gigawatt of solar power for larger systems. And then there are a few other tenders coming up during the fall and also in the next year of around 600 megawatts for PV and wind, or 200, etc. There's also a great amount of funds allocated from the recovery plan, the NextGeneration EU funds, for energy renovation on residential buildings and also firms and public buildings. And the main focus, you could say, of the Greek National Recovery Plan is to increase the energy storage capacities. And there's a big tender coming out soon. So the goal is set at having an energy storage capacity of 3 gigawatt by 2030, and also to upgrade the whole electricity network in city centers and in settlements of special importance. And also to improve the electric interconnectivity of islands in order to increase their potential for renewable energy sources, which is the unused potential. So there are 450 million euros allocated to in energy storage system developments, with 200 million euro for battery-based projects. And this money comes partly from the European funds, and it has just been approved 2 days ago, tender for the development of electricity storage facilities. And they will have a capacity of 900 megawatts. And the award of the contracts will be before the end of 2023 and completion of project by 2025. So this is also an important investment area of Greece. Considering Greece's ambitions and the reforms that are being made, and also these economic resources that are being put into the development of the renewable energy sector, and especially solar, together with wind, of course, makes it an interesting market that we think that Swedish companies should definitely keep track of. So thank you.
Great. And just to sum up, the opportunities that we see in all these markets in Southern Europe related to solar energy and how to actually take part of these upcoming investments and how to enter the market. We, of course, see big opportunities to establish partnerships with local stakeholders. Partly it is the local governments that make certain decisions on these tenders and upcoming projects, but also when it comes to the local energy companies and multi-utility organizations that have a very significant role in establishing the project's plans and actually conducting the actual work that is to be done. So we encourage local partnerships and engaging in the tender processes, as well as R&D projects that are coming up for innovative solutions. And when it comes to the supplier companies or requested technologies on these markets, it's of course targeted towards actual producers and manufacturers of solar panels and their innovative technologies to improve the capacity in the upcoming new plants, as well as technologies for offshore wind and solar, as well as floating solar power, as was mentioned in Greece and other markets as well. And when it comes to energy efficiency, due to the favorable tax incentives, of course, it makes companies favorable, and companies can offer very competitive prices thanks to the incentives. So it's not so expensive for clients here locally to purchase new solutions and solar panels. Here as well, we see an opportunity to partner up with local companies and installators as well as distributors that can bring in new technologies and products to the market, especially in the residential sector, but also when it comes to industrial large-scale plants. And then finally, of course, digital solutions for smart grid network. There are tenders up and open right now. It's pretty short deadlines, and there as well partnerships with local distribution system operators and local energy companies can facilitate the market entry in this case. And of course, we are here to help and support when it comes to finding and navigating through the market and finding these local customers and partners suitable for you specifically. Great. So thank you from our side for this opportunity, and now we will open up for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentations on all your different countries. I see there's a lot of potential for solar in all of these. I was wondering, looking at these quite ambitious targets and goals, even national strategies for how much to be installed, what obstacles do you see country-wise for reaching these goals?
I think if we start from here in Italy and Greece, we had a lot of reforms also included in the recovery plan, because until now it has been pretty complicated and challenging to even get approvals of new projects. And since the traditionally very bureaucratic and administrative countries as Italy and Southern Europe in general, it has been pretty challenging to even initiate these new projects, even though despite the ambitious plans, the reforms for licensing and approval of new projects has not been so prioritized. But now the aim of the recovery plans from EU is also to dedicate task force to actually do these reforms and facilitate the licensing process and accelerate the approval to start and initiate new projects. So that has been a challenge, an obstacle up until now, but hopefully it will change in the future. I don't know if you have anything to add from Spain and France side, or.
I think from the Spanish market is quite similar. The administrative barrier is the biggest one. But of course, as Elisa was saying, we have now had these recovery plans for nearly 1.5 years. So it is starting to loosen up and the money started to get allocated in the right part. But of course, it is still a complex system, and that is why we're trying to promote also the incentive that Swedish companies entering the Spanish market or the South European market also have the possibility to actually be part of this budget and allocate the projects.
And so, Business Sweden, are you able to help or identify or put people into the right context when it comes to these bureaucratic obstacles? Is there something you help with?
Yes, it is something we help with quite regularly. Companies come to us for support in these instances. Like Elisa and Manuela said, it's the administrative burden that's difficult. In France, it's similar, but we also see, for example, that there can be some protectionism in the countries, that French-made technologies are preferred, even if it's not mentioned outright in the procurements, etc. This is also an obstacle that I just wanted to add. But also in these cases, this is something that we are used to working with, and there are strategies that we can recommend to Swedish people how to get around those obstacles, for example, by partnering with a local company that will make your company appear more French and things like that. In general, I think on the markets, it is important to have a local partner for these types of challenges also for the administrative part. Language-wise, it's much more easier if you have local presence to support you in your growth, I would say.
I think that's a very good recommendation. So strategic partnerships is what I hear.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have a question here. Can we contact you if you want to enter markets in other EU countries other than those you've been talking about today?
Absolutely, absolutely. We work very closely across markets, not just in the Southern European region, but with all our colleagues in the other European offices as well. So you're very welcome to contact any of us, and we will put you in touch with the right colleagues.
Very good. Let's see, we have a few other questions. What does the process permit look like in Italy?
For a solar park?
Yeah, so this is ground-mounted stuff, 10 acres and up, for example. Just interested to understand if you have any expertise or can guide for the Italian market. Is it like in Sweden, you have a county board process, länsstyrelse, or is it more municipally based, or do you even need like a national license in Italy? That's a few questions I would have.
Yeah, very good question, and I'm happy to also discuss this further. Just a short answer for today is that also Italy is very much region-based, so 20 different regions in the country are quite independent in deciding on energy and climate plans forward and investments and how to incentivize, for example, installation of new solar power parks and so forth. So it's definitely very important to be engaged with the regional decision makers. So a little bit depending on scope of the project, of course, could be also on a national level, but usually take very much their own decisions and have the autonomy on deciding on these processes. So for example, as we saw in the map, Puglia region has been very active in authorizing new projects for solar and wind, and there has been therefore bigger growth compared to other regions for this kind of projects. So also a little bit depending on how active the region is itself to encourage new projects. But we can definitely look into that deeper to understand who is the right decision maker for your projects and so forth.
Good, thanks. But we can probably take that offline.
Yes.
Can you show your email addresses again so it's easy for everybody to find?
But this is our team in Southern Europe focusing on the smart energy ecosystem. Of course, as mentioned before, we have very much cross-border collaboration within EMEA region. So even for other markets, we can be the point of contact and then forward you to right colleagues in at least Sweden.
Fantastic. We have 1 minute left and one question left. So Johan Hernström is asking, do you have experience in both self-consumed PV and utility scale? May I ask who this question is directed to?
Hi, thank you for a good presentation. So I guess for all of the countries to understand, so I represent Light. We are active both when it comes to utility scale and this behind the meter or self-consumed PV in this market. So it would be interesting to understand how and if Business Sweden can support us.
Yes, we can support you both with self-consumption PV and utility scale. As you saw in this presentation, it differs a little bit for each market how the strategy is allocated, but actually all the markets are working in both hands. So we have been working both with the utility distributors and also been contacting consumers to see like what is the trends. And in Business Sweden, we work very closely also to the government, and together with the embassy, we try to open the doors in order to get the right responses and to open the market the best way. So we can help you with both self-consumption and utility scale PV.
Okay, so thank you again very much for this insight into your different countries. I hope you get a lot of calls and emails from our members. And we will direct the presentation to those who weren't able to join us today. Thank you very much, Business Sweden.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for svenska as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.